All right, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. So anyways, this is the advanced vision training today. So anyways, my name's Tom Bredis. I'm a manager here at ATI USA in charge of customer support. You met my colleague if you joined the Vision Basic training, Anthony Conestraro, earlier today, located here in lovely Novi, Michigan. And our general support is support_us@accuratechnologies.com. Any questions at any time, feedback, good, bad, whatever. We like to see it all. So that's our main contact. Oops. There we go. All right. So just kind of what we're going to be going over here. I'll go over a few latest release highlights. Some of the stuff here might have been touched on a little bit in the basic training, but that's the case, I won't spend too much time on it. We're going to go over the use of the Calibration Manager and what it's used for. Talk about some ECU interfaces, data acquisition, viewing that data, and some other assorted, a little bit more advanced vision features that probably wasn't covered in the basic class. Talk a little bit about the Vision Data Analyzer. This is our standalone data viewing software product. And then Q&A. But like I said, Q&A can happen at any time. Just shoot out a question and we will do our best to answer it. All right, some latest vision highlights. This one came out in about Vision 6.0 timeframe, I believe, earlier last year. We have the ability to undock a screen. So you could take a recorder file that might be in your Vision project screen, and you can actually undock it and make it its own entity, so you can stick it on another screen, something like that. You can do that for any Vision file type except for the project file itself. Another good feature that we added was the Recorder Manager. I believe Anthony touched on that a little bit, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on that today. That's a way to manage all of your recorders in one space, in one spot, in your project, so you don't have to keep switching screens to start a bunch of recorders. File recovery, we'll talk about that. MDF4 streaming, and we'll talk about how those two different variants of MDF4 formats are different. There's always new and improved firmware in any Vision version. I believe there is definitely some updated firmware packages in Vision 6.02. Which is our latest and greatest out right now. Enhanced diagnostics, we'll touch on that a little bit. And also talk about the data analyzer itself. The latest release right now is 3.2. We have a lot of good stuff VDA related for 3.3, and we'll touch upon those things that are coming. All right, so Calibration Manager, what it looks like. So what can you do with the Calibration Manager? Quickly view multiple calibrations at the same time. I'll go through kind of setting this up and how you do certain things. You can easily create a new calibration from existing items in calibration files that you've already added, or you can manually input them. You can filter down to see exactly what you want to see. I know a lot of calibration files might have tens of thousands of items, but if you're only interested in ones that have a certain string of text in them, you can filter down easily like that. Group by data items, meaning 3D table, 2D table, text string, state variable, scalar, that type of thing. Give you your base address view. And also there's a statistics table for your maps and tables. So this is an overview of the Calibration Manager workspace. On the left side here, you can do a later pointer. Yeah, on the left side here, you've got all your calibrations that are in your active project. And you can see under here the tab that says Vision Demo. It just happens to be the name of the project I was using for the screenshot. So those are all the calibrations in your project. The first one that you select will become your reference cal. If you wanted to change that, you would just right click on another one and say set to reference cal. Then you'd have to select the other ones again. Comparison areas over here. So you see you've got your base working and your working cal temp matching the names over here. And each one has its own tab displaying its data values. And also your stats table tells you what's different, what's the same in between each file. Got a little video loop playing here. So this is kind of how you go about, I already did mention that, setting your reference calibration. So you would right click to reset your reference cal. And then you can also use the My Computer tab here to select anything that might not be in your active project. So it makes it pretty easy to select calibration files that you don't have in your project. We are revising the way that you select the items that are not in your active project. So it is a little tedious right now. We've got an old way of doing that, but it is being revised for a future version of Vision. Sorting and grouping. Click and drag up to the kind of the empty value header bar there. You can show and hide columns as you wish, and those are saved within your Vision project. So it looks the same every time. You can double click on headings to sort just like you would with anything else. You can auto filter a row, and then your comparison toolbar here. So you've got your different values, missing, different types, different sizes, different units. Also filter by data item type. You can create a filter file if you really want to filter down that way. You can do that. Filter by memory region. That's also useful, and also a button to clear all the filters. So kind of bring it back to norm. You can also assign these to custom keystrokes as well. And we'll go into a little bit more of the customization a little bit later on. And I'll, after a couple more slides, I'll launch Vision here and share that screen with you guys. And I'll go through, kind of show you this in real time as well, just real quick. So creating a new calibration. So whenever you launch the Calibration Manager, you'll always have the mouse pointer column called New Calibration. So that'll always be to the right of whatever cals you might already have. Same screenshot as from before. In order to create a new calibration, you have to populate those cells basically in that column. So you can click and drag, or right-click context menu, or you can manually enter the value. So in the right-click context menu, there is a way to add all items from that particular calibration, or add just a few, or add what's different, so, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch Vision really quick just to kind of run through that. Okay, so for a new installation, you might not see Calibration Manager right away. So view Calibration Manager, I believe it is hidden by default. So I've got my project here. So I'm going to select my base, and that becomes a reference. Working cal becomes the one I'm comparing against. There we go. I believe these are the exact same, so there are no differences. I'm just going to go in and make a couple changes. There we go. Save the file. Back to Calibration Manager. I'll have to reload this because that's held in RAM. There we go. Yep, so now we've got some differences shown. Anyways, where was I? Right-click context menu, copy to new calibration. Either selected data items, either one or more, all data items from your working cal or demo, or the base cal, I'm sorry, your reference calibration, or just what's visible. So if you have anything sorted and filtered by data item type, You can go, okay, I just want to show the scalars, and you want to copy the new calibration, visible data items from, working calibration. Come on. Those all get copied over like that. Or you can control left arrow or control right arrow. So different ways of going about that. Cal maturity as well. That's another feature that can be quite useful when you are comparing analyzing a calibration file. So you can set custom maturity levels for that calibration, and that is saved within the calibration file for that particular item. And that is saved within the calibration file. Yeah, that's right. And it is also visible in the Calibration Manager as well. So to do that, you would just right-click on the value properties and then set maturity. One of the most used functions of the Calibration Manager is, I would say, the calibration comparison report feature. So you can see here in this loop playing, we've got a report. You got your calibration comparison and calibration data report. Calibration comparison report will give you a report of what's in each file and what's different, missing or not missing from each file as well. Calibration data report will just spit out a text file of what's in that calibration file, not really paying attention to any of the differences. A couple different formats for exporting as well. So you can find that in the right-click context menu or up in the comparison file menu when you're viewing the Calibration Manager. Reference calibration. So it's a real-time comparison of your calibrations within a screen object. So you can set a reference calibration in your project tree just like you do in the Calibration Manager. Then you can choose to enable the reference view in your screen object, and then that will allow you to view something like this so you can see your actual value and then the reference value. All right. Next, we're going to talk about ECU interfaces. Not just A8 like you see there, but all types of connectivity to your ECU of choice. So we do support quite a bit. We've got CAN, USB, Ethernet. Ethernet is becoming the way of the future, I would say. And we're pretty much already there. So we've got a couple Ethernet serial interfaces ourselves. This does have to be updated because we have an A9 out right now. Those are starting to be sold. We've got another little bit of a beefier interface in the works as well. So anyhow, over CAN, we support CCP, XCP on CAN, and CAN FD. The ISO 14229 UDS device, that's Unified Diagnostic Service. That's going to be becoming a bigger player in the worldwide harmonized diagnostics ASAM standard here in the next couple of years. We support heavy truck stuff, J1939, for flashing only, KWP, Keyboard Protocol 2000. CAN monitor, I wouldn't say that's much of an interface into your ECU, but it is a way to view the data over a CAN bus, assuming that you have a database or a DVC file. OBD2, enhanced diagnostics. It's all standardized diagnostic stuff that you're probably familiar with. Over USB, a couple of our rather legacy emulators, M5, M6, and M6V, have seen a couple of these trickle in for support over the years, but a lot of programs nowadays are even the A7s are starting to trickle off a little bit. A lot of programs are going A8 or, like I said earlier, A9 now, or just utilizing XCP on CAN-FD, in particular with a couple of our customers. We do support XCP on Ethernet as well. Support for J1979 on CAN, it's your OBD2 device. Enhanced diagnostics will allow you to view your DID data, assuming that you have an ODX or MDX file. So it's a little bit more of an enhanced version of the existing OBD2 device within VISION. Okay, so UDS device, we've got accesses to ECU data using the standardized ISO 14229 commands. And those are actually acquired over using DMRs, by using the DMR address. So you've got your two choices of data acquisition modes: polling, which is by default, or rapid packet DAC mode, which is available with a device setting, assuming that your ECU supports that. It does use a VST file with extra settings for UDS. Depending on your ECU, those device settings might need to be tweaked from what others might use, but those are all things that can be done. Flashing over UDS is possible with a script that we here at ATI do have to write. Not a very common thing, but it is possible. And this, along with anything else in VISION, can be used alongside other ECU interfaces. So you can actually be connected to the same ECU with an A8 and UDS at the same time, and your diagnostic service too. Not a very common use case, but it is possible. Okay, talk about some data acquisition. A couple different acquisition methods you may or may not be familiar with. So we've got asynchronous and synchronous. A good analogy we've used in the past is as it relates to buying and or eating a pizza. Asynchronous, you get a bunch of slices. They may or may not be from the same pizza. Synchronous, you get a whole pizza that has all the slices that were made at exactly the same time. Explain that a little better here. Asynchronous data acquisition does not rely on any kind of timer so that VISION knows exactly when to send the data. So VISION is requesting a piece of data from your ECU. I'm talking asynchronous now. So asynchronously, VISION is commanding the ECU interface to collect some data, regardless of what any task loops that might be running on your ECU. It's going to go out and grab that data at any point during that loop, as you can kind of see in the diagram at the bottom here. So asynchronous data acquisition can be also can be called polling, or using local DAC tables with an A7 or A8. And you cannot acquire at ECU event rates. So an event rate is something that is tied to a task loop that's running on your ECU. Synchronous data acquisition is where we get that data point at the same exact time every time, because we know that we're running on a task loop. So you can see in the diagram down below, task loop starts, scans, executes, generates the output, and then processes that display table, which is what we use for synchronous data acquisition. So as soon as it processes that display table, it sends it up to the ECU interface, A7 or A8 or whatever, and then, or even UDS actually, and then sends that data to VISION. So sync and async example here. We'll have to explain it a little bit. So synchronous data acquisition. So this looks like one line. That's actually 16 channels from one device at 2 milliseconds, and each circle here is a data point. That's 16 channels overlaid on top of each other, so it just looks like one single line. So asynchronous data, from the same ECU, not relying on any kind of task loop or anything like that, you can see you've got two data packets here. So you've got one data packet coming in here every 2 milliseconds, then one about 100 milliseconds later, or 1 millisecond later, another data packet comes through. So that's an example of asynchronous. It's not that you're missing data or anything like that. It's just that data packet came in 100 milliseconds before the other one. If you wanted to avoid that, you would set up synchronous data acquisition. A few things about that. Your ECU does have to support it. You have to know the address, the update rate of your task loop, and that would usually come from somebody who's familiar with the ECU code. So kind of an overview here about your typical VISION system. VISION manages a global clock to synchronize all of your devices. So your development ECUs, all your sensors, vehicle networks, or anything like that, all comes into VISION and is time-stamped when it gets into VISION. So you could be on different USB root hubs, you could be on Ethernet and USB at the same time, or even RS-232. Doesn't matter. It's all time-stamped when it hits VISION. So there's no post-processing timestamping that you have to do manually. It's all done automatically. Setting sample period. I've probably gone over in VISION Basic, but I'll touch on it again really quickly here. So you've got your period here. So that's a period for each individual item in your recorder properties for this example. And you've also got your default sample period. You can change default, so you just leave period as default and then change that one, or you can select one or more of these and change that sample rate for those individual channels as well. Again, it's all time-stamped when it comes into VISION, so no biggie. You can also sort by type if you want to find what items might be missing. So DAC rate information pane. So that's a pane that's hidden by default in VISION, but it is a really, really good way to start troubleshooting. If you run into an issue where you're missing data, your recorder might say, hey, missing 3 channels. Like, okay, well, which ones? So if you do pop over to VISION, running a little simulation. So this is the DAC rate info pane button. So you can see now I am acquiring in all my screen files here, acquiring just 17 items at 200 milliseconds. So 200 milliseconds is the standard update rate of our screen objects. So if you wanted to change that, just so you can see that change, update period, we do 100 milliseconds, and you can see that changed there. So now I'm acquiring all those at 100 milliseconds. It's a little fast for a data list. You really can't analyze anything because it's all thrown away, but kind of get the gist of it. So anyway, so the DAC rate info pane, great way to see all the items that you are acquiring in all of your open screen files and active screen objects, and also any recorders that may or may not be running. So you can see that just bumped up because I just started a recorder. If I stop the recorder, item's going to go down again. So if you do select one of these, it'll tell you where that item exists. DAC rate info pane, great place to start troubleshooting and also seeing what items you may or may not be missing out of your recordings. All right, some recording tips. So smart data rate selection can greatly reduce file size. A 5-minute recording with 100 channels at 100 milliseconds, probably not that bad, but you take all of those 100 channels down to 500 microseconds, you've increased the size of those particular channels and the file in total by about 50 times. So you probably don't need to record battery voltage at 500 milliseconds, things like that, So smart data rate selection can reduce stress on vision and also make reviewing your data a little bit easier. DAC list sizes and rates are defined by the ECU and also the interface that you use. So manipulating screen objects can cause a quote unquote no samples condition, and you can see that in the screenshot below. So basically what that does is any screen object that you have open in Vision is actively acquiring data from that device, whether it's a EMX or an A8 with your ECU or anything like that. So if you were to minimize, let's say minimize a data list, that means Vision is no longer acquiring that data, so it's going to destroy that DAC list. And if you were to re-enable that data list, unmaximize, or start a recorder or something like that, Vision is going to have to rebuild that DAC list in order to start acquiring that data. And that is the gap that you see here. So that's about, what, 300 milliseconds worth of time being used to rebuild those DAC lists. It's a little bit, this build is a little bit slower with like things like CCP and XCP. With an A8 or an A9 or XCP on CanFD or something like that, it's a little bit quicker. It's not as slow, but you still will get a gap where Vision basically stops acquiring data in order to build the DAC list and then starts acquiring it again. All right, so recorder features. This was probably gone over in Vision Base or Vision Basic, that is. Got your arm trigger, of course. Unresolved channel options, so you can choose to block the recorder from starting, to record anyways, or prompt for action on the start. So it'll tell you, hey, you're missing these items. Do you want to continue, yes or no? Global markers. We'll go over. There's a slide in a couple that we can go over all the marker options. File name macros. Those are macros that you can add into the file name and also the comments of your recording. NDF4 streaming, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, and auto exporting. So going back to auto exporting, so that is a way for when if you're set to record to .rec file, which is by default, Vision recorder file, you have the option to, as soon as that recorder is done, to automatically export it to some other version or some other format. So that is right over here in this export tab. Got a selection of MAP, MDF3, MDF4, ASCII, and a few customer proprietary file formats, and those are based on your what Vision toolkit you have. So most of you probably won't see any of those. So here's your block recorder start action. Can be useful, not an automation because it does require an input. All right, so some marker tips. So the 3 ways to add a marker by default, that is. So you've got your Alt-M, spacebar, do exactly the same thing. So you can see in this video loop playing right here, I did Alt-M, then space, and then Alt-C. So Alt-C adds a marker and then brings up a dialog for you to enter a marker comment. And regardless of how long you take to enter that comment, you don't need to hurry up and enter it really fast. So, you know, your marker gets to where you want. It's already there. So this is like that M11 right there. Those are all saved within the recorder file that you can view and analyze later on. So there's another behavior, that you can set as well for these markers. So at the bottom right here, up in the main tools options menu in Vision on the general tab, there's a checkbox that basically you can tell Vision to, whenever you do Alt-M or space or Alt-C or whatever, to do it to all of your active recorders or just the one that's in focus. By default, it's on for all of them. So if you have 3 recorders running like I do here, you hit any of these options and you'll see a little blue box appear. That means a marker was just put in. And these Alt M, spacebar, and Alt C, that can those can all be customized as well up in Tools, Customize. So you can customize that keystroke as well. Yeah, and then in your Vision Recorder file, Markers tab, you'll see all these items here, and you can change your comments as well during post-processing. All right, so file name macros. Touched on that a little bit before. So you can see here, you just click on the macros button and you get this macro dialog. So basically, you put your recorder or your cursor where you want, and you can say, I want to know the date and time in this format, and also the counter of whatever file iteration you're on, and then just hit OK, and then it'll be inserted in there. So this counter acts just like the auto generate file name, but what the counter macro will do is it'll actually scan the directory before it gives it a number to see if that already exists. So if recorder _2 already exists, it's going to go to recorder _3. So it helps a lot on automation, and I use this quite a bit. Also, different things like your username, project name, vehicle manager ID, strategy associated. Also, an item value, if you want to know the item value or the value of an item when your recording stops, is quite useful. All right, so working with some recorded data. Floating window feature. Talked about this earlier, but I'll show you how to do it really quick because it is quite useful. So let's say I'm just going to do a quick recording here. All right, so view data. There we go. Got some data here in Vision and some stuff to make it pretty. So let's say I want to view my Vision project at the same time I'm viewing this recorder file. You can unmaximize it here, the very top right of your screen. So you've got kind of everything in the same view. You right click here and go floating. So now it becomes its own entity, and well, you can only see the one screen that I'm sharing, but this is over on my other screen right now, and it's in its own entity. To bring it back to where it was, just right click again and go standard. And it's going to shove it back into Vision, and then you can maximize everything, and you're back to where you were. So quite useful if you're working with a multi-screen environment. Do that with VST files, calibration files, screen files, whatnot. Calculated scalars. It's probably touched on as well in Vision Base or Vision Basic. So you would right-click in the graph legend to add a calculated scalar. We do support quite a few different formulas and functions. I would recommend, if you're interested in learning more about this, I'm not going to go over it all right now. So back over to Vision. Actually, pretty helpful Vision help. So if you search for operators and functions, this one right here, you've got all of your operators and functions that we support in the syntax of what to do. And the virtual calculated channels, operators, and functions as well goes into a little bit more in depth. So definitely support a lot. If you have any questions about syntax of any of these types of things, Vision Help is the way to go. You would simply right-click, add, give it a name, and then give it an equation, and then that gets put in your recorder file and is also saved within the layout. Here we go, recorder layouts. I've done this before. Layout Manager, this was gone over in Vision Basic as well. It's up in the Tools menu, so that includes everything that you've customized in your recorder file. Additional graphs, colors, line shape, size, scaling, that type of stuff. All your trace pages and your calculated channels as well. One thing to know, if you do get a recorder file, let's say from somebody, and you want to kind of clear out all the layout information, what you can do is actually apply this user default. So that's just a default layout that Vision uses based on your selection and tools, options, recordings for what layout to apply for a new recorder file when it's viewed. So by default, we don't apply a layout at all. So I don't have any default. So I went tools, options, recordings, default template, none. And initial trace page action, do not add any traces. We did that because files are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what people usually do anyways is apply a layout right after they open a recorder file. So if you have a recorder file with 2,500 items in it, and you're going to apply a layout that only views 10 of them, why take up all the time and resources to display 2,500 if you're just going to view 10 anyways? So anyways, I'm going to do another quick recording. One thing to keep in mind, has been brought to our attention a couple times before in support inquiries. Question is, hey, I do a recording, and when I view the data, hey, there's nothing there. Data is there, just nothing's being displayed. So you got your little drag selector here. So this is the main signal list. This is everything that's in the file and cannot be removed unless it's a calculated channel. And then this is your graph legend. Graph legend is what you're actually viewing. If I were to delete it, it doesn't delete it from the file, just deletes it from view. So something to keep in mind. All your layouts are stored as separate files with a .rlt extension. You can export those. I know a lot of people do kind of have a checklist for backing up certain files and things like that. I know some of my customers have been using the same layout file for the better part of a decade, and they do want to keep perfecting that and also backing it up. So you can export out of the layout manager that you saw earlier, and you can throw those on a thumb drive or whatever, and you can also do that to share with other people. Default location is a little buried, but we did that so we don't get any write access violations. Some systems that have the lockdown with user write restrictions usually always allow us in this location. So anyways, button in the tools, options, paths, data files will take you right there. And if you do manually put anything in that file location, you will have to restart Vision in order to see them. All right, different y-axis functions. To add a y-axis, to add an additional y-axis in a recorder file, you'll have to uncheck normalized. And you can see that there in the screenshot. That is selected by default. So normalized means whatever item that you select in your graph legend will have its own y-axis that updates in the view at any time. So only one y-axis can be viewed at a time. And I'll show you that here in this recorder file that we already have. Just add a couple things. Change those background colors a little bit easier. So here you can see, I'm pointing with my finger. You've got on your y-axis here, changes with whatever you've selected. So that's normalized, so you can have everything scaled how you want within the same view. In order to add another y-axis, go back to black here. Right click, disable normalized. So you can see the scaling has changed, which is to be expected. Right click, add axis. You can add more than one if you want. Oops. Add the graph instead. Add axis. So whichever item you click on will always update in the leftmost y-axis, but clicking and dragging will give you the chance to assign those to that particular y-axis. Just like that. You can control, click and drag to move that selected axis. Scroll wheel, the control key on your keyboard acts as a modifier. So if you just have one item selected and you have a mouse with a scroll wheel, hold down control and you can either click and drag that particular channel and then use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out on the y-axis for that channel. Time axis functions. So this is for a overlay file in Vision. There's a way to do this in VDA. It's a little bit nicer, actually a lot nicer. We'll talk about that a little later on. Okay, so in order to go about this, you would have to add a file to another file. So that basically, as you can see down there in that screenshot, it overlays one file on top of the other. We'll go into that here in a second. And control key plus click and drag will move those time axes independent of each other. And you can also double click on the x-axis to change from hours, minutes, seconds to, I believe, just minutes. Graph view tools, in order to, well, you do have the options in your recorder file to add multiple graphs, and you can also remove or minimize those graphs to put them out of view. So you got your graph 1, graph 2, graph 3. You hover over the name, you've got your minimize, minimize. Right click again, restore minimize graph. Graph 1 or graph 3 in this case. You do have a horizontal scroll bar now. Allows you to see all your graphs. But if you were to hit zoom all, it'll bring them all into the same view, but sizing is still a little bit off, and that is something that we're working on. So that's a way to get your graphs back. Lots of different zoom tools as well. I believe Anthony went over those earlier. Adding notes, you can click the notes button on your toolbar. It looks just like that. So that enables notes mode. So anytime you click the left mouse button, you're going to be adding a note. Your first click is where you want the arrow to point, and the second click is where you want the text box to reside. And you can move that stuff around after the fact, of course. So after the second click, you'll get your dialog here. You can enter your note, and that will be stored within the file. It's not saved within the layout, so it is only stored within that particular recorder file. And then once you're done adding notes, you disable this notes button. And you can also choose this button here to hide all your notes at the same time. Here we go, file overlay. So go up to the recordings file menu when you're viewing a recorder file, and you can add file to current plot. You can add an offset to either axis. I have seen people do this before if they want to combine two recorder files end to end. You can just know when your last data point was. Let's say it's at, in this case, 150 seconds, and you want to put that file at the beginning of the other one. You just set an offset here of minus 150 seconds, and it will go ahead and do that for you when you open it. From there, you would then export. So that's in the right-click context menu in the graph. Right-click, export items, and it'll export kind of everything into a flat file. So you'll no longer have two x-axes. You'll have one x-axis with referencing two different files. And you'll see that in the graph legend. There'll be like a 1 and a colon, and then RPM, and a 2 and a colon and RPM, so you can see which file or which item came from which file. Partial recordings, a way to export just a part of a file, excuse me, based on these selections here. So over on the left, range of data means everything. Range of visible means what's on the just visible in the graph legend. And range of cursors means whatever's, I'm sorry, range of visible is what your current x-axis visibility is. So whether it's 10 to 20 seconds or 10 to 11 seconds, that's the time that you're going to be exporting. And then the range of cursors is whatever is in between the cursors, time-wise. Data items, all, obviously that means all data items to be exported in that particular range. All on page, which means all items on that particular trace page, or visible only. And that's only the items that you are viewing right now in your current view. Another very useful feature that has been, I wouldn't say hidden for a while, but it really doesn't get used that often. So I do like to add that in here to let people know that this feature does exist, and it has enticed some interest in the past. So hopefully it does now as well. So it's called the Find in Files feature. I'll stop this for a second. So what this is a way to search for an event in a recorder file or multiple recorder files. So if you want to see when, for instance, RPM was greater than 500 or something like that, or whatever this example has. So up in the Tools menu, you'll find the Find in Files. You can just select a sample file, continue through. I want to find RPM greater than 5. Okay. Give the expression RPM greater than 5 a name. So it's going to search for RPM greater than 5 in that recorder item or that recorder file that I selected. And when you double click on it down there, it'll actually open up the file and put cursor 1 right at that event. There we go. In this case, it just happens to be at the very beginning. So a very, very useful tool. And again, that's up in the Tools, Find in Files. Sorted vision features. Recorder Manager. This was gone over this morning. I'll go over it again. Another one of those kind of hidden features. It's really not at the forefront, but do like to mention them. So what the Recorder Manager is a way to manage all of your recorders in a single area. So you can see here in this example, you've got, so it's in View Recorder Manager. It's new in Vision 6.0. Come on. There we go. So View Recorder Manager. So you've got 2 recorders in initial screen and 1 recorder in script chart screen. You can start them all, stop them all at the same time just by multi-selecting them. What you can also do is create what's called a project level recorder. So a project level recorder is a recorder that exists within your project. So if you go back just a second, go back a little bit more. So new to project recorders, that's just in the right click menu there. So that creates a recorder that lives within your project. So regardless of what screen file you're using or anything like that, this will get shipped with every project that you share and be viewable in the Recorder Manager just like that. So I've seen some customers use this as a kind of as like a master recorder, I guess you can call it. So if you want to be sure that, if you're distributing out a project to a bunch of team members, they might have their own screen files and record, the data that they care about. But if you, as the manager or whomever, want certain data to be recorded for each project, you can set that up here, and for every project that you ship out or share, you'll have that recorder there already configured, and it will allow you to do what you want to do with it. Yeah. It just shows up as a tab right at the bottom of your Vision screen here. Another feature is what's called file recovery. So it's also new to Vision 6. We're at 602 right now. That is our latest and greatest. So what file recovery is, it will every, in this case, 60 seconds, you can see in the screenshot there on the right, every time interval of that value, it will scan and see if anything has been marked as dirty. Marking as dirty means that something has changed since it was last saved. So you can configure over there in Tools, Options, File Recovery, which file types to pay attention to. And what it will do is, in the event of a crash or your laptop battery dies or something like that, since it's already spun off this type of backup, when you start Vision, it's going to look in its temp directory for those items, and if it finds any, it's going to say, hey, autosave found. It's not really autosave, but file recovery found some file recovery events, and it doesn't match what you're trying to open. Do you want to restore? And it will restore the data that was last backed up, I guess you can say. So you can set the size threshold to that as well. And timer intervals, I believe, goes out to 2 hours, I think, and down to, I think, 5 seconds. That does eat up resources, so keep that in mind. As you can see here, down below here, what I did was I saved, made some changes, then forced quit Vision, so simulate a crash. And next time I started it, it gave me this dialog. I chose yes, and everything was back. All right, streaming to MDF. There we go. And streaming to MDF. So this is becoming more of a necessary feature nowadays, with big data becoming more of a thing. Data repositories, recording everything, everything underneath the sun, huge data files, that kind of thing. So MDF4 in particular is a ASAM standard file format. And I believe as of Vision 6.0, we started supporting this. If you're interested in trying this out, I would definitely use the latest version of Vision as possible, as we're always tweaking and fixing and solidifying this feature. Anyhow, so main advantage of streaming to MDF is that it streams directly to disk rather than holding that recorder data in RAM. So with a Vision recorder file, it has to pre-allocate all the RAM, all your memory, in order to ensure that recorder can start and finish based on the amount of data items, the update rate of those data items, and the length of the recording. And sometimes it's too much for Vision to handle. Vision right now is only a 32-bit application, so it can really only utilize, with all the background stuff going on, around 2 gigabytes of RAM. So 64-bit applications can utilize much more, and our next major release will support that. But so if you are running into size issues with your recorder file, streaming to MDF might be an option for you. So in this animation that's running in the top right, it's the same exact count, data item count, same exact file length and update rate for those channels. So it's 10 kilohertz from one of our EMX devices. So you can see at the very top, that's MDF. So you can see pre-trigger starts, the recording starts, saves the data, and then it restarts itself. As you can see, the one on the bottom here, everything the same, but it's in rec. So what we have to do is we have to get all that data out of RAM and onto disk, so it takes some time to save all that off. So the MDF one is almost done 2 revolutions around this recorder file one. So much more faster turnaround time. There are 2 format options, 1 channel per group, and also the ASAM MDF-NC standard. Go over that here in the next slide. All right, so this is a little bit wordy. This is mainly for when people review this afterwards. 1 channel per group saves a recording in MDF version 4.1 using a structure where each channel has its own unique set of timestamp and value pairs. That's different from the one on the bottom, MDF-NC. So that is what we consider the most efficient. That's right. It is items with common sample rates are grouped together, whereas the 1 channel per group, each channel has its own group. So the file size will likely be a little bit larger, but some third-party tools might require that type of format. So we do leave it in there for you to choose. And right now, the recorder is defaulted to recorder file as default. I wouldn't say the .rec format will ever go away. I would expect it to remain for forever. But as MDF4 becomes more standardized, the support for the rec viewer within Vision might not be getting as many updates and tweaks and fixes as it has in the past. Doesn't mean you still can't view your data. We're getting to that here pretty shortly. Parameter customization, I believe Anthony went over this, but this is saved actually within the VST file rather than in the project. So it has brought up a little bit of confusion before. So what this does is enable you to set value warnings, set range text, colors, decimal places, things like that. And those are stored within what's called a Vision Parameter Template file, .vpt file. And you can export and import those as you choose. Formula bar is down at your Vision screen, at the bottom of your Vision screen. So you can put a simple formula in there, and you can increment and de-increment as you choose. And it will show, I believe, the last 10 formulas will be held in that drop down as well. Yeah, so with that apply forward and apply reverse, the blue and red arrows is what it's doing is just doing the inverse of that formula to bring it back to the value that it was before. Cell marking and interpolation. So you can mark a cell in a table to make it unchangeable. So if you're happy with that value and you want it to remain, you can right click and mark that cell. And those cells are actually used as hard points for interpolation as well. I'm sorry, it's not the right click and mark cell, it is this button right here. Table residency. Tracks the amount of time the ECU spends in each cell in your table. So you can see a little bit of a darker blue here. That means your running point that's associated with this table spent a little bit more time in this area. So there's a very easy way to find if you're stuck in a loop somewhere, things aren't working. You can turn on residency, which is on by default. And kind of see what's going on there. If you make a change and want to kind of reset that, you can clear the residency as well via the button on the toolbar. Table slicing. So this is the same table as you were looking at here, just in a little bit of a different manner. So in the in the properties of that table, you've got a tab that says slice here. So you enable the table slicing and it will give you a different view. However, you may or may not want to look at that data. I don't see this used too much, but it's there. Exporting a memory image. So what you can do is export a memory image file that has the current strategy and working calibration values. So it's a good way to take your calibration data and be able to export that as a memory image so you can import it while creating another strategy at another time. export to a binary, hex record, or S record files. Sharing projects. I'm sure some of you have shared projects with others before. So the best way to do that, rather than gathering up all your files manually, is to open up your project and go to Package Project. So you have to be viewing your device tree, then you go to File, Package Project, and it will bring up this dialog. Pause this here in a second. So you have the option to package all your files or only the active files. So if you have 15 strategies and you only want to package the one, you would choose active files only. But if you want to package them all, you would choose all files. Same thing goes for your vehicle manager. If you have multiple vehicle managers configured and you only want to export what's in the current one, then you select current vehicle only. Another feature we added, I believe in Vision 6, was ability to back convert every file in that package project to a previous version. As you might know, that not all Vision files are backwards compatible. They're always forwards compatible, but not always backwards compatible. And that usually comes down to a 1 or 2 digit release. So 6.1, there is no 6.1, but if there was, 6.1 to 6.0 would not be compatible. But 602 to 601 is compatible. Vision 7 to Vision 6 would not be compatible. So this is the best way to gather up all of your files to share it with others. It removes all of the location information, meaning where it is on your hard disk. So when you open up a project, it's not looking for a file in a location that is on your colleague's computer and not yours. Packages everything into a zip file, nice and neat for you. And I would definitely recommend using this if you have to share your projects. Add-ins. So another neat feature here is the add-ins menu. Don't see this used very often, but it can be quite useful, especially if you do a lot of scripting stuff. And you have a lot of like custom apps that you use. So basically, it's just a way to shortcut in and also provide some execution constraints in this add-ins menu. So it's up in the file menu. You can manage your add-ins. You can point to an existing exe file or a text file or some kind of executable. Supports environmental variables as well to control how it's launched and when it's launched. All right, we shall move on here to talk about the Vision Data Analyzer. So I would say that the Vision Data Analyzer is going to be the main data viewer moving forward with us here at ATI. So it is a standalone application. It was developed for viewing MDF4 data files. One of our devices, one of our products that we have is called the DLX. It's a standalone logger device, and it only exports MDF4 files. Much easier for a logger to do that than mess around with the .rec format. So had to give our customers a way to view the data. It's been a long time in the works, and it's getting there. And with all the standardizations coming up, it's really hit light speed now, and it's almost to where Vision is as far as usability, and it's a completely different file format, completely different code base for the software product itself. So a lot of work has been put into this. So like I said earlier, the rec format will probably never go away, but moving forward, I'm talking 5-10 years, Vision Data Analyzer is going to be where you're going to analyze your data. So let's talk about it a little bit. Mouse. There we go. So there's a couple ways you can get the Vision Data Analyzer. It does ship with Vision, at least for now. So whatever latest fully released version was released, it's included in every subsequent Vision release. So in this case, screenshot from a pre-release, but Right after the Vision installation, you'll get this dialog. You can check that box to install Vision Data Analyzer. Vision Data Analyzer. If you miss it, the installer is at this location here, the Vision install directory. I would recommend going to our website though, since it is a separate installer, we can release it separately as well. The latest out right now is VDA 3.2, with the VDA 3.3 imminently in the works. So that's the next version 3.3. We should have at least a public beta out for that very shortly. I know for many new users, this might not be something that you might use right off the bat, but it's definitely good to know that it's there. Okay, so what's the same? This is just a comparison between VDA and Vision. So your trace page navigation, your control mouse clicks, control scrolling, that's all the same. Axis scaling, adding pages, adding graphs, little tiny context menu changes. But as far as the workflow goes, it's I'd say 90% the same. No big drastic changes. We don't want to have to make you relearn another software product. Some of our competitors might like doing. Anyways, so what's new? So like I said before, it is a standalone 64-bit application. I've had files that are 3 gigabytes large and have over 120,000 separate channels, and it really doesn't skip a beat. Yes, it does take a little bit of time, but no longer than opening up any other type of file in VDA. What we're doing with this one is we're actually only loading what you're looking at. So if the file's 4 hours long and you're only zoomed into the first hour, we're not loading that extra 3 hours. So we're not using up all those resources. And that comes into the third bullet here, optimize channel loading. Enhanced marker and note support. I believe a question came in earlier whether or not you can add a marker or move a marker after the fact. You can. I believe you can do this in VDA. Let me see. I'm actually going to open up VDA right now and kind of show you guys some things. So this is what it looks like. This is the latest release. There's just a little temp file. So your triggers and markers window is no longer a tab down here. It is actually a floating window. So triggers and markers. This one doesn't have a marker in it though. Do this really quick. I'm going to set this. So in Vision, if you set something to record to MDF4 like I just did, and you record, I'm going to use the spacebar to add a couple of markers. See the blue box? And when you hit stop and the magnifying glass, it's actually going to open that up in VDA. There we go. So you can see those two markers that I just added here. So view, triggers and markers. There we go. I do not believe you can move the markers after the fact. You can change edit marker. Sorry, so edit marker brought up this. Yeah, you can't change the time, but you can change the comment. There we go. You can actually add a marker after the fact if that helps at all. So add a marker. Yeah, okay. New marker, comment, comment. And add a marker is same as location as cursor 2. Let's go cursor 1. So that'll add a marker after the fact. There we go. You can change the opacity level. of a trace. So if you've got a very noisy channel, but you don't want to hide it, like a state variable that's very, very noisy, you can change the opacity of it to kind of send it a little bit more towards the background. Optimize data item select. So I'll go over that in the next slide. Trace overview. That's another feature that we added, and that's actually at the very bottom here. I'll show you really quick in VDA. So that's this bar right here at the very bottom, and it's actually doubles as a horizontal scroll bar. So I'll add a couple channels here. Let's say, I've got all these channels visible right now, but I want to view this one, say EGR, regardless of my zoom level. So you can see I just just click and drag EGR down here. You can actually add more than that if you really wanted to. Kind of a noisy one. So regardless of how far you're zoomed in, you can still see the entire trend of that data item. Also keeps check on where your cursors are as well. VDA also allows to create what we're calling a Vision Data Analyzer Overlay Project, a VDAP, and I'll go over that here pretty shortly. I know Vision Basic did go over some of this, so I won't spend too much time. It does require the Vision Data Analysis Toolkit, which most of you probably already have. If you don't, and you try to launch VDA, it will tell you. So improved data item select, it's kind of a dynamic filtering. Just start typing and it'll bring up anything with that name. You've probably seen this with other software programs. As far as the adding to the selected items, you select, hit add or hit enter, and then it goes right back up to you can start typing again to add something else. You double click your selected items to remove them, and also an advanced filter builder. This hasn't been developed in a little while, but it is in there and it does work, but it's not I don't want to say not the greatest thing in the world, but you can get away with it just with some like other types of expressions. But if you do have a very large data set, it is kind of an easy way to build a very advanced filter. So you can check it out if you really need to. Triggers and markers, I kind of already did that. Those are floating now. So triggers and markers, and also your kind of tooltip pop-up will kind of overlay if you hover over a trigger while you're viewing a data item. You can see that in the very bottom right. Metadata. We've added quite a bit of things from the that the MDF4 format allows us to have in the file. So it is a standardized format. And what we can do is actually add all this metadata as an attachment to that file. It's all in the same .mf4 file, but it's added as an attachment based on its data type. Includes a file history tab that goes back to when that recorder file was first recorded. You can see what tool version, whether it's Vision or something else. Also, you can view the raw and formatted. It's all pretty much just like an XML format, so that might be useful for you. What is not possible now is editing these user fields. That will change for, I believe, the next version of VDA. Layouts. So layouts, one of the prerequisites for another standalone data viewing tool, which ended up becoming VDA, was the ability to import your Vision layout files. Like I said before, some people have been using the same one for ones for the better part of a decade or longer, even 2 decades now. And they don't want to have to rebuild everything and start fresh. So we did come up with a way that you can import your layouts from .rlts to what we're calling a .layout file. Pretty original. And those are all stored in a common location. And those are also displayed within the file menu here. Let me show. So you got layouts. I don't have any imported in this version, but let me go import Vision layout files. It's going to ask Vision for its template directory. I guess I don't have any in there, but I can browse to 602 templates. I'm sure I've got some in there. Yeah. So I can select those, hit import. Oh, destination directory. Now I'll just go desktop training. So it's going to convert all these files for me into .layouts, and we can use those in VDA. So it will contain everything, just the same as the Vision layout file. Axis scaling, graphs, colors, blah, 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 calculated channels, everything like that. There are a couple issues that they're being worked on right now, but will be resolved for 603, mainly regarding calculated channels. Some formulas aren't working right. You can see 4 out of 4 succeeded. That's good. So none of those layouts will actually work for me, but any layouts that you do apply will all be kind of stored here in this menu. And the layout information is added as an attachment to the MDF4 file, kind of like with the other stuff as well. So it travels with the file. Calculated channels. We do support more formula types, and also you can do some pretty advanced calculations. You can actually write your own code to do an advanced calculation, as you see here. So when you go to add a calculated channel, as you see here, you've got an option for a C# code file, and you can not skip. There we go. Select that, and it'll open up your edit code, whatever, and you can put in an equation here, and when you hit C# code file, it'll bring up everything here and give you like the syntax of kind of how it's structured and things like that. So if you're using the C# code file, you probably know what you're doing. So it's a very, very advanced tool for advanced calculations if you want to do to use that. And that's also stored as part of the layout. And if you export an MDF file to like a partial MDF, those calculated channels are now stored as channels in the file, not as an attachment. Overview bar, did already go over that. We can see here in the animation that's running. Panel functions as a horizontal scroll bar. It does have 3 height options. If you right click on it, you can either hide it, short, medium, or tall, based on however you want to use it. Next, we've got our cursor functions in VDA. So we've got rollover and crosshair. I think I've got a couple. Yeah, I've got a couple example slides of that. And also a floating cursors window. So you can change your color of your cursor right there by clicking on the little color swatch. And you actually input a time. So if you want to go to 49.991 seconds, put that in there and hit enter. XY plots, those do carry over as well from Vision. For those of you who use them, you would right click down in the tabbed area down here, add page XY plot or another trace page. So then you would select your data items. You would just click and drag over here. A bad example of data items there, but that's how you get it done. Chain cursors can also be used to locate the data point on a trace page. So if you hit the chain cursors button, it looks exactly the same as it does in Vision. And you click on a data point, it will place the cursor at the same point on your trace page. There's your rollover and crosshair. So there's your crosshairs, and then here's your rollovers. Rollover just is a little dot that follows the trace and gives you the values. All right, so Vision Data Analyzer projects. Talked about this before. This mimics or mirrors the file overlay feature in Vision, but with the Vision Data Analyzer project, overlay project that is, what you can do is actually save it as an overlay, meaning you can save the look and feel of having the two or more x-axes. So what it does is when you have a new VDAP file created, it'll ask you to select your first data file that you want to use, and then from there you can add subsequent files. So I'll go over this really quickly. So I'm going to go File, New. It was just asking me if I wanted to use the same file that I was selected on. So Training, let's go Vision Demo, and just Test. I'm just giving it a name here. So I'm going to browse for a MF4 file, or even a rec file. So essentially what VDA does is if you select a recorder file, it will call it Vision in the background, convert the rec to MDF4, and then open it. So let's do that. So here we go, converting. It's going to open. So there we go. So I don't have the file itself open. I've got the VDAP project open with the file open within it. So now I can go recording, add file to recording, or close out of that, view overlay files manager. Let's keep this up here. So add overlay file. I'm going to select a different one. You know, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to make a copy of the same one. Doesn't really matter. So it's going to overlay that file I just chose. And what's been a question for quite a while was, how do I change the color for file one all at the same time? It'll be different from the other one. So you'll go single color mode. So you can see all the colors for file one are, in this case, red, in this case, a light blue. I can just close that. What I can do here is shift these. Yeah, get 3D glasses on, that might look kind of neat, but that's how you go about that. So this can be saved as well. When you go File, Save, it will actually save the VDAP project and save the references to both of these files that I opened. So the VDAP must remain next to those two items. So if it's on your local PC, it's probably okay. But if you are sharing this with somebody else, you don't want to share just the VDAP file. That's like sharing just a Vision project file with somebody with no associated files. So what you can do is, here in the same menu, Package Project. Yes, I wish to save it. So it's going to save it, and it's going to ask me We're to save it, and it's going to compress and zip everything up. And we can actually go and see what that looks like. Desktop. Training. There we go. VDAP save. See what's in it. So we've got the VDAP project file, and then the two files that I had added. So the VDAP contains information regarding the zoom level, where the x-axes are opposed to each other, that type of thing. And also with those two files as well. So I say that it's one of our longest running feature requests, was a way to save how it looks when I overlay a file. So you can do that now in Vision Data Analyzer. Just screenshot what it looks like. We do support some export functions. Import functions are coming with VDA 3.3. So we've got your ASCII, MDF, MATLAB, and VDAP exporter. So if you export to VDAP, it will essentially be just like creating a new VDAP with that file as a reference. And you've got your time range and items, very similar to Vision. Now, we've got a couple slides coming up. I'm not going to go through them all, but it's mainly just for reference for if any of you visit this presentation at a later date. Basically, what's coming for VDA 3.3. So we've got a lot. A lot of it is focused on speed of opening files, speed of scrolling, things like that. We did have a couple of things that were causing some problems, things that were appearing to be a little bit laggy, things like that. So all these features are coming for VDA 3.3. And like I said, we should have a public beta out pretty soon. As you can see now, it's November 2nd, 2021. So really excited and hoping to see that very soon.